Hello and welcome to another podcast from Odell Technology.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm Angus Dixon, and I'm based in Australia, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Daylight Foundation.
Excellent, Angus. Nice to have you on board. Angus, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up where you are today, please?
Yeah, very happy to. Look, after over 30 years in the healthcare industry and in this space, and all working for-profit organizations, I saw a need to help make a significant impact in an area that was very close to my heart for a number of reasons, and in particular, the fact that I had a father and a daughter who both suffered from significant healthcare associated infections, and started to see what I could do in that space.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about this word called infections. Why have infection rates remained largely unchanged despite advances in healthcare?
Yeah, that's a doozy of a question to start up with, and it's not one that I can definitively give an answer for. And right off the bat, I'll also say that I'm not a clinician. That's not my area of expertise, but I do believe that I can help bring together organizations, people, hospitals, researchers that will help find the answer to exactly that. The short answer is there is no silver bullet, and we don't really know what's leading to. There's a number of things, but we don't really know exactly what's leading to this massive issue, which is both antimicrobial resistance, which I'll talk to further, as well as HAIs or healthcare associated infections.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about how current reimbursement models unintentionally discourage prevention.
Yeah, also another big question, and this is very different around the world. As I said at the start, I'm based in Australia, and I certainly know a lot of the international models and how they work or don't work. But in a nutshell, one of the problems is, in my mind and our board's mind, is that there's no specific incentive to help reduce infections. Sure, clinicians want to do their best thing and their best possible care for a patient, and there's no suggestion whatsoever that they would be ever wanting to see infections. In fact, quite the opposite. But unfortunately, because in many of the models around the world and some of the systems in Australia, there is actually an attractive reimbursement for infections that do happen, and we believe that that doesn't necessarily lead to a really good top-down approach of trying to drive infections as we would like to see towards zero.
Okay, so talking about your organization, why can't one organization solve the entire problem? I mean, to me, it's really about things like the SSI wearable study and other things like that have uncovered why one organization can't solve the problem. Is that right?
Yes, it's such a big issue. I mean, to give you an idea of the scale of the issue, the World Health Organization has already looked into this into the long term and revealed that, or their research is showing that by 2050, which is not that far away, 20 years away, they're already predicting that this will cost the global economy to the extent of $70 trillion with a T, trillion dollars a year, and will also be costing in the vicinity of about 10 million lives every year. And to put that in perspective, that's more than the number of lives lost in the worst 12-month period of the COVID pandemic.
Okay, so it's pretty sick. I mean, it's something that we've really got to start
It's
acting on.
huge. And to back to your question as to why one single organization can't do it, it's because it's so multifaceted, and every healthcare system around the world is slightly different. The US brought in a model which is actually very advantageous to this around infections. They've got some other issues, I believe, with their healthcare system, but around infections, they treat them as a complication and don't reimburse the hospital for those infections. If a patient comes back to that hospital with an infection, they don't reimburse the hospital for treating that patient. So they've got a massive, massive push to try and reduce infections.
And that seems to work, you think?
It is. It's absolutely working, yes.
Okay, so how does your surgical infection research model work in practice?
We've got a number of research projects. The way we go about them is we're not trying to say that we've got all of the researchers. In fact, far from it. We actually work with what's referred to as administering institutions, and they are typically universities, and we work with the biggest universities. That'll include La Trobe University or Melbourne University down in Victoria, and Sydney University or Queensland University of Technology in New South Wales and Queensland. And we work with them and also partner with great organizations as well as hospitals, as well as clinicians and infectious disease experts to try and pull together the best of the best, all with this overarching view or intention of trying to drive infections to zero.
Okay, so you've got a training collaboration with Sydney University. What role does education play alongside data and technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. We believe there's an enormous role that education can play in this. As I said at the start, we've got brilliant clinicians here in Australia and throughout the world. There's fantastic clinicians who are all trying to do their best. Unfortunately, as far as infections go, there can be just one small lapse at one point in time that leads to the transmission of bacteria from one patient to another or one piece of medical equipment to another patient. And that can be catastrophic for that patient. And it can take what would have otherwise been a very good outcome to being a potentially horrible outcome.
Okay, so how
And
do you?
we believe education can play a huge role in that, in particular because technology, which there is fantastic technology nowadays with things like virtual reality. You and I are probably too old for this. Well, speaking for myself, probably, but the use of things like gaming consoles and stuff like that, which wasn't around so much when we were young, is now commonplace for these younger clinicians and junior medical officers coming through, and they're wanting to learn through technology, and you can do so much with it. And other industries have used this incredibly successfully, like aviation, heads-up displays and virtual reality to try and mimic situations that you just can't do with mannequins or attempted displays to try and train people to consistently do the right behaviors that are helping to, in this case, reduce infections.
So behavior can be managed through data. I mean, how do you approach this particular situation of patient data sharing and consent in the model you're describing?
Yes, data is a huge one in the field of healthcare, and it's we sometimes put such restrictive constraints on the use of the data that's well beyond what even the patient would like to see and what they think of when they think about the security of their data. And what I mean by that is, as an example, one of the studies that we do, we ask the patients, or the intention through the ethics committee approval is to ask the patients, would you be prepared to have some of your information, and we mention what the information is. It's things like, it's none of their personal information, it's just about temperature variability or heart rate variability or whether they've had diabetes and these are all indicators, pre-risk indicators for infections. We ask if we can monitor those, especially in the critical phase of the 30 days, for example, after an operation. And if we can do that and get their consent to do that, and usually we find they're incredibly happy because if that's mitigating the risks of a very serious complication occurring, then they'll usually say, my gosh, this is a no-brainer. And to wear something like a patch, and I'm pointing to my arm here, a patch on their arm, which is they can shower with and things, but it's giving vital data for the next 30 days. And so if there was an infection or an inflammation, then the clinicians would know much, much more quickly and have an idea of what that infection is because of all of that collection of data preoperatively to ascertain what that infection might be and get onto it much, much faster.
I think when you first started talking in this particular podcast, you described yourself involved in a not-for-profit. Does being a non-profit enable better collaboration across the system?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
And how does that work?
Well, yeah. Because your first question, it was more around, we can't do this without the for-profit companies. We absolutely
Yeah.
need them, but
Yeah.
we're going about it a different way. We're trying, as in we being the Daylight Foundation, are trying to see what we can do to eradicate infections. For-profit companies, generally speaking, are seeing what they can do to manage the infections that do occur and treat them. They're quite different modes of doing it. Both are vital. We need the antibiotics, etc., but we don't need the antimicrobial resistance that comes from them. So
Mm.
both are critical. We believe that we can do that through a not-for-profit mode. One, because we're not trying to make money out of drugs that we're trying to sell. We're trying to, uh, well, not make money. We're just trying to reduce infections, but there's no money in reducing infections. Infections are billable, that
Mm.
we said before,
Mm.
and the treatment of them is billable. But the reducing infections, an infection that never occurs, you can't bill for something that doesn't occur. So we're trying to treat. We're trying to find ways to ensure that those infections actually never take place.
Okay, so this leads on to the question of what would you do if one research project or one research stream eliminated the need for the rest of everything else going on in the antimicrobial world? How would that affect your organization?
It would affect it massively because I'd close down the
Mm.
organization and do 100 cartwheels, and I'd be absolutely stoked, and I'd go on and look for something else to do.
Yes.
That's perfect world for me, is to find a way to reduce it. And if another company does it, another organization does it, which is highly
Mm.
likely, fantastic. We'd love to work with them, or we would just go on and do something else.
Okay, so how does your work in Australia complement global efforts such as the antimicrobial development or the antibiotic development, I should say?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So we believe that not enough data is currently being picked up on a global basis. And what I mean by that is we're not collecting data to be able to measure ourselves. When I say ourselves, any hospital can't measure itself on how it's doing in comparison to even hospitals down the road, let alone hospitals on the other side of the world. So we can't pick up best practices, and we're not seeing the mistakes that are happening and learning from those and ensuring that they're not being replicated elsewhere. So by well, one of the other projects that we're working on is a very, very sophisticated app, which is a global app. I've actually called it 4I. It's the four I's stand for International Infection Intelligence Index. And
Okay.
it's a way of measuring the collection of data, but not only the collection of data, the use of that collected data to see how infections could be reduced.
Okay, so is this is this one thing that would most accurately accelerate infection reduction at a system level?
It's a big stepping stone, and it comes back to many people have been accredited with this particular quote, but it's basically that if you don't measure it, it doesn't exist. And at
Mm.
the moment, we're literally not measuring it. When I say we're not measuring it, we're not measuring all of these other factors that are leading to infections and what can be done to help mitigate those risks of the
Okay,
transmission of the infections.
all
So
right.
we know a lot, but we're not measuring it very well at all.
So how can organizations, clinicians, and partners like yourselves engage meaningfully in this particular quest that you've begun?
Look, there's so many ways. As we're doing it here by, as in Australia, by bringing clinicians, bringing universities, being researchers, bringing infectious disease experts in together on the projects that we're doing. But if there's any desire from anyone out there who's had maybe a loved one or themselves have been through an infection, then gosh, there's opportunities to either donate money to foundations like ourselves to help try and pay for the research that is being done, that we are absolutely trying to make available internationally, not for any cost, literally just to try and help reduce infections on an international basis. Also, and not everyone's in that position though to give money, so we've got opportunities set up for patients who have been through infections themselves to fill out surveys on our website, and I'll give the details for that.
Mhm.
But that is to collect information just to show and make awareness to the government bodies and to the hospitals just how impactful these infections are to the lives of the patients that get them.
So, Angus, through your leadership and through what you're doing currently, I know that you're writing a book. What is the core idea behind the book you're writing?
Yeah, the book is, thank you for raising it. The book is a bit broader than just infections. The book is a bit more of a, gosh, it's not a light read just to sit down. But it's a complex book looking at the intersection of philanthropy,
Mhm.
the use of AI and data analytics, and healthcare, and seeing where the mix of those in a new age, if we have got a better focus on trying to manage and curtail some of the biggest issues around the world, the climate changes, and in this case, healthcare and in particular infections, but big issues that need to have answers to them. How we can get the philanthropists seeing what these issues are and directing funds into the right areas to help reduce infections and stop just looking at, which is happening too much, is I believe anyway, is focused on what the costs of a not-for-profit are, as opposed to looking at the outcomes.
Okay,
Too
so
often
what
I
would
believe we measure success, so-called success of a not-for-profit on what the percentage of the use of the funds are for the organization as opposed to the outcomes.
okay, that makes perfect sense. So, what does success look like over the next 10 years?
Over the next 10 years, we would love to see infections ultimately reduced by, in the countries that are getting access to the sorts of work that we're doing and is being deployed, of a reduction of between 30 and 50% of the fatalities associated with the avoidable infections. And just to give you an idea, in Australia, that could lead to in the vicinity of 2 to 3,000 lives saved per year, and multi billions of dollars saved to the healthcare system. On a global scale, it's obviously a lot more than that.
Mhm. And in Australia, you've said you had leading universities working with you. Have you got large hospitals, large teaching hospitals working with you?
We do. One of the biggest projects that we're working on at the moment actually is a culmination of both public and private sector in Australia, and one of the biggest private healthcare groups who have been absolutely fantastic and incredibly supportive of what we're doing to try and reduce complications. And they wanted to lead the world, and or certainly lead in Australia, but certainly lead and try and lead it in the world in terms of reducing complications. But that's been done in collaboration with one of the biggest public hospital systems based here in Sydney too.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. And have they publishing data at this point in time?
Everything we're trying to do, our plan is to publish it. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And you've done that so far?
No, these are long-term goals. Some of
Oh,
these research projects are 5 years,
okay.
each of them. Some of the shorter-term ones in terms of use of data and the ways that we can measure better. You will start to see some things in the next 6 to 12 months. But yeah, they're not. This is not work that just turns around overnight, and many of these projects are minimum of 5 years
Hmm.
to see the research through.
Okay. There have been developments with new antimicrobial tests and warning systems.
Yep,
Are they being used in Australia?
they are. They are not enough, but they are.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
there's some wonderful new technologies coming out. What we've got to get our head around in Australia and around the world is, sometimes it might be slightly more expensive to do fast turnaround testing,
Hmm.
but let's have a look at the bigger picture rather than just seeing that as a cost increase. Let's see that
Hmm.
against what the lives saved or the lives improved by reducing those number of infections.
And the members on your board, what do they consist of, and what do the people what areas do they come from?
Yeah, we've got a wonderful, wonderful board of directors. There's 8 on the board in total. And whilst there's predominantly a clinical focus to them
Mm,
in terms of there's 2 orthopedic surgeons. Um, there's one of Australia's top colonoscopy surgeons.
mm,
There's Matthew Reid, who's also a general surgeon, but is also one of the top translational data experts
hmm,
in the healthcare field. We've got one who's done 30 years in healthcare banking
hmm,
and working and doing some wonderful, wonderful work with us. Another who's an ICU nurse, Marie Claire Elder. She's
hmm,
was an ICU nurse and then has gone into law, and
hmm,
she's now one of the top medico-legal lawyers in the country and sees a
hmm.
very, very different view of this world again, and it's an incredibly helpful view.
Good, excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Maybe do you have any closing comments about the efforts and what you'd like to see unfold?
Oh, look, I'd love anyone to go to our website if they're interested in this. Feel free to reach out. I'm Angus Dixon. Our website's www.daylightfoundation.org.au. And I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to drop me a
Excellent.
line. There's contact details in there.
Absolutely wonderful to have you on board, Angus. And I hope to talk to you again in another 12 months about your progress and share some of the statistics and the numbers that you're producing. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity.
A
Much
pleasure.
appreciated.
Good to see you, mate.